Hello. So groovy. I feel like I could be in that internet streaming holding area for hours and still keep enjoying it. I am Chaz Evans, Director of Exhibitions of VGA Gallery, and your host for today's episode of VGA Fireside. It's a big milestone. We started this program in January of 2021, and so this is our final episode of 2021, rounding out a full year of conversations with artists who make video games. So it's a huge joy and delight to bring you this 10th and final episode of VGA Fireside. And that means also we need to thank everyone that has not just supported this episode, but the entire year of programs. And here's to more. So anyway, thank you to our producer and director of operations, Bryce Pulse. I want to thank designer and director of communications, Eleanor Schichtel. I want to thank the VGA staff and the VGA board. I want to thank the Independent Game Designers Association Chicago chapter. Thank you, Ross, for helping spread the word. I want to say welcome and thank you to the media arts students in the Visual Art and Design, the School of Visual Art and Design at the University of South Carolina. Thanks to Bailey for helping spread the word. And I want to welcome and thank the students from the Media Art and Game Design module in the Radio, TV, Film department at Northwestern University. Thanks very much to Derek for helping spread the word at Northwestern. I want to thank the Electric Mirrors, who provided that groovy intro music that I was enjoying, and I hope you were too. And I want to thank the Oldham Music Center Youth Brass Band for the fanfare you will soon enjoy. If you know of an organization or group that would be interested in this program or have any feedback whatsoever, as always, please drop us a line at info@vgagallery.org. We would love to hear from you. I think that is all of the thinking that I need to do at this particular moment. So Bryce, please hit us with the VGA Fireside fanfare. Yes, the fanfare is played, our hearts are roused, and it's time to officially set this episode in motion, and we're going to welcome our very special 10th guest, Xalavier Nelson Jr. VGA Gallery welcomes Xalavier Nelson Jr. for our last VGA Fireside of 2021. Nelson is a BAFTA-nominated, award-winning narrative director, writer, ex-PC gamer columnist, IntroComp organizer, and MCV Rising Star. He is best known for his work on games such as Reigns, Beyond, Hypnospace Outlaw, Can Androids Pray, SkateBIRD, and An Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs. Everyone at home, please help me welcome Xalavier Nelson Jr. to VGA Fireside. Yes.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Please imagine the sound of every set of hands on the internet applauding you to the stage.
That's a terrifying mental image,
too many.
and I
All right.
appreciate being here. Thank you.
Okay, let's reduce this to a nice, tidy, but healthy amount of applauding hands. Xalavier, how are you doing? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm doing pretty well. We just announced the release date for one of our games today, so I don't know what is the description for the emotion I'm feeling right now. It isn't ennui.
Right.
It is an existential dread.
No.
It is, that look the farmer has, and like that sort of like classic early 2000s film. Like he's standing in the middle of a field. He's staring off steely-eyed in the distance, and you hear a boom of thunder in the background.
Yeah.
That's the emotional space
Yes.
I'm in right now.
Okay, so excitement with a tinge of looking at the unknown, staring the unknown down.
Staring directly into the unknown in some sort of metaphor for the American dream, yes.
Yes. Well, it's so exciting that we could catch you on this momentous day where you have this important announcement, and then we can also talk to you about that project and other games you've worked on. I guess since it was mentioned, let's just get it out of the bag right now. What is the new project that is going to be available to everyone very soon?
Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator is a sci-fi body horror market tycoon game. Gods, the usual stuff. It's Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator.
Terrific. Please forgive me for not catching all that. Either I froze or you froze. Bryce, who's freezing the most?
I'm not having any freezing.
Okay, then it's probably a problem on my end. But do you hear me?
Yeah, we're all good. I think it was Xalavier for a second.
Okay, great. Well, I think we'll have time to get to that. Exciting body horror commodity trading title. But let's warm our way up to it by talking about you a little bit, because we are people, and the context of our lived experience helps us understand the artworks and games we make. So, and also we have students or other people trying or interested in joining the field of video game making, and these kinds of origin stories I think are always very valued and interesting. So let me just start things off by asking you simply, how did you get involved with video game making?
At the age of 12, I pretended to be an adult so I could become a games journalist, and somehow it worked.
That's terrific. You want to expand on that? What strategy does a 12-year-old like to use to pretend you're an adult? Just the anonymity of the internet, perhaps?
Anonymity of the internet and persistence.
Mm-hmm. That's so at 12 you're already joining the industry, so to speak.
Yep.
Was there any part of your experience in education that directly touched on games, or were you cutting your own path the whole time?
The interesting thing is, because I was homeschooled, and my parents were particularly fond of a philosophy known as unschooling, which is that your human experience is a greater teacher than staring at a textbook for 8 hours a day. They were very open to alternative ways of fulfilling assignments and reaching educational goals. So if I was really interested in spies, my mom would take me to the library. I'd pick up like all sorts of books about spies from all different age ranges, fiction, nonfiction. I'd gobble that up, and that fulfilled everything from history to social studies to etc. It's an open and more so unplanned way of pursuing a wider educational goal. Up until that age, I hated writing. I never wrote an essay. Despised it. But suddenly, I found out that games journalists get games for free, and I was like, wow, I'm 12 years old. This is a perfect job. Games for free?
Uh-huh.
Rent doesn't exist. There is nothing else a human being needs.
What else would you use money for other than video games? Yeah.
Just inject chicken tenders into my neck, and I get free games. So, yeah, I in terms of my educational course, my education became business communication, figuring out how to try to be a professional anonymously via the internet. No one knows you're a dog when you're on the internet. In this case, that no one knew that they were dealing with prepubescent literal child. And yeah, I learned to write in a professional context very early and got out a lot of my horrible, awful, poorly arranged words early.
Right.
So that by the time I'm reaching this point in my career, hopefully a lot of the bad words are gone, and now all I've got are the good words.
Right. I have two follow-up questions. Did the precocious age that you were ever become revealed and cause any problems in that professional setting, first of all? Or
not really. I'm sure there's some people who suspected, but also, for good or ill, whatever this says about our industry or the internet or whatever else, a lot of the stuff I didn't appear much different than any other amateur journalistic endeavors. It was just precocious and persistent.
Right.
And I did my darndest, and I made a lot of mistakes. and I learned a lot of cool things too, and hopefully found ways to, even at that precocious age and state, find ways to make a positive impact on other people.
Terrific. Second follow-up question. So with that very self-determined, self-initiative driven manner of learning about the world, was video games a subject that you wanted to know everything about, or were video games a kind of mode of communication like writing that you were going to use to learn about all other kinds of subjects?
I was always fascinated by video games. One of the earliest pictures of that exists of me is I'm sitting on my dad's lap with an unplugged controller as he is wrapped with his own attention focused on a game. So games was always a part of my life, and I was always fascinated by them. I was always deeply interested in their history and their context. So very early I was reading periodicals, not just to read game reviews or get opinions, but to understand how and why this medium came to be.
Right.
So that early experience and set of desires, which I'm very thankful for, ended up forming a major part of my creative practice now and my perspective today.
So I do want to get into your current work very soon, but I guess there's one other sort of plot point I'm curious about. Is it can you tell us about how you move from, the writing is sort of the core of the creative practice, but how do you move from games journalism to narrative design and writing that ends up going inside of video games?
The first is a matter of perspective. I'm very, very thankful to God that one of the early things that was determined in my heart was I don't want to just get my foot in the door of the industry. Mm-hmm. I want to find what will keep me here. What do I actually care about in terms of the process of bringing things to life? So every career move and pivot and subtle shift I made was following what sparked joy the most often and allowed me to have a positive impact, not just on my own career, but on the capacity and working environment of my collaborators. So that.
Shoot, getting another little freeze, but I'm sure it'll work itself out soon. What a unfortunate moment of freeze. I was really enjoying that answer.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. I was really enjoying the answer before the internet decided to interrupt. Your last thing I heard was you noticed that you pivot to make a positive change, and that's something you started doing with your collaborators. I guess you got to repeat the answer you just mentioned, or we could move on.
The second piece of it was practicality. Yeah. So
yeah.
First was perspective. Second was practicality, which is after I got past the honeymoon period of I'm 12 years old and getting free games, yay! Very Muppet-like. A series of truths and realities, including rent, paying bills, feeding yourself, became apparent, and I. Coming from a very lower middle class background, had a deep desire to never risk or invalidate the sacrifices that had been made to try to put me in a position to pursue my dreams. So everything I was doing in terms of thinking about my next career move was in the context of what are the tools I have available. Mm-hmm. What is at hand within my reach that doesn't put me in a position of debt or other extenuating circumstances that might risk not just my creative career, but also, my livelihood or that of the people that I love. So I started getting from journalism to games by making games with what I had. The one thing I could wrap my head around at the time was Twine. because I knew a little bit of HTML and I could write. So I did whatever interesting thing I could with that limitation. And as my capacity to do things has increased, it's always been a question of not what could I do, not what could I do, future tense, speculative, but what can I do right now that's interesting within the resources and limitations I even proactively define.
Yeah. That is a terrific moment of the story that you can find both a practicality in both sense of like taking care of your life, but also like as in practice, like as in just practically doing a thing, as well as finding a source of joy that perhaps was even more fulfilling or more joyful than the strict journalistic path, like all sort of hovering around twine, right? That's not that we ever want to over determine any particular tool, but the fact that there was one out there for you that could sort of synthesize a lot of stuff is really awesome.
At every stage, including like being able to pretend to be, an adult, the tools that exist in this particular moment in humanity, from the internet to the blog environment of the time, before content creation mainly moved into video and streaming.
Right.
It was a lot of it was writing based, which is great if you have a prepubescent voice. The overall context, including things like Twine being available, I have had opportunities I would not have in any other moment in our industry. And it has made me immensely grateful for not just that synchronicity, but also has put me in a position where I want to advocate for creating more of those opportunities for others. Because if we are seeing the opportunities and tools to enter our medium constricting over time, we have done something deeply wrong.
Do you feel or fear that the amount of freely available tools is constricting or expanding or staying the same? Like
I feel that the tools we have are expanding in a positive way, but the environment in which we release and even structure our discussions around those tools is atrophying.
Yes, and perhaps create human relationships through the teaching and sort of mentoring or sharing ideas through the tools is perhaps more tenuous.
To a degree, we have more ways than ever, very direct access through things like Twitter, such things like this own fireside chat. We've got more availability than ever in that regard, but the discussions we're having around our creative practices and works are in a very odd position where with $100, you can have your game on Steam right alongside Grand Theft Auto 5. Is it going to sell as many copies? Nearly no chance at all. It might not even be in the same place, but the fact that you can access the same platform, have a global audience for that low of a barrier to entry is unprecedented.
Yeah.
But instead of seeing development cycles get shorter, including with the unprecedented accessibility of our tools, we have the asset store. We have things like Unreal 4, which are free. And you owe Epic nothing if you've made under $1 million with a given game. Like, incredible, unprecedented, nigh insane opportunity is here. But the conversations and discussion around our medium is such that that is not being seen in a context of value. Right. All we're seeing is like more and more companies getting acquired or making super groups and conglomerates. We're seeing even or especially from successful studios, dev cycles get longer and budgets get larger, and publishing agreements change to increasingly focus upon scale and live service support. That means despite having more resources, more availability, more accessibility than ever. I fear the fact that so much of the consolidation we're seeing in this precious, remarkably unfiltered moment in time is being discarded in favor of another lottery poll, larger lottery polls that, as a result of going through more traditional processes, also filter out a lot of diverse voices, because they're making a visual novel, a publisher who doesn't take a glance at anything below a $250,000 budget sees no value in it, and therefore they receive no support at all. Not just financial, but just like publishing, press, networking, etc. There's things to confront in this time.
So regardless of whatever promise of democratization of the field is given by free or nearly free tools, this has not come part and parcel with the new system of values for new, different, challenging, structurally novel ideas, right? The values around ideas shift at a completely different pace than whatever participation is garnered with just tools alone.
Additionally, our systems are increasingly supporting those larger bets and not those smaller bets. Right. So, and this isn't just in terms of like size and scope and scale. I mean things like the fact that Steam has you you have a minimum of 2 weeks before you list your game, after you list your game on Steam, before you can release it, means that regardless of how fast your production works, there's a 2-week blocker somewhere in there where Steam puts you through a wish list algorithm parade. Right. If your business model is dependent on the number of wish lists and pre-release cycle digital commitments you gather, and you have a production process that allows you to pull out really interesting work in 6 months or less, you are at a disadvantage compared to someone who's even making something of a lower quality caliber, but it takes them 2 years and they have 2 years to gather wish lists. Our systems are influencing inherently the way through which we access and release our work. And I think a lot about how, as time goes on, despite ostensible democratization, we're seeing a calibration towards a different kind of game and not acknowledging how much that environment is changing the games we're making. As one last example, if you've released a hit algorithmically, and culturally, in terms of just like sales, you're deeply disincentivized from being like, okay, I'm gonna make a new game, because that's new wish lists, that's new customer outreach, that's new everything.
Yeah.
If there's a lever that at any time, if you have made a hit game, you know you can pull it and you will get $300,000 in return for just 2 months of your life. Just another 2 months working on that game instead of doing anything else. That is going to, I don't know about you, but I would be freaking tempted to keep pulling that lever.
And that feel a lot of pressure to take that road. Yeah.
And that leads to cycles where, we can make games in 6 months to a year and a half that would previously take years, if not decades.
Yeah.
But instead, even if we're in the rare and beautiful position of making a hit, we are incentivized through the systems of access through which we are presented to players and people come to our work to not go down the next road, pursue the next game, but to pull the money lever, if only because we exist under capitalism,
right,
and need that money lever pulled so we can pay off our student loans.
Well, to this, I would just hope that the proposal of having local arts organizations or other kinds of non-for-profits focus on games would be one of the ways out of that sort of algorithmically deterministic, discover situation that requires all these levers.
The
Hopefully.
one way we can save video games is supporting the VGA.
That's it. You figured it out.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
We cracked it.
I have one question for the audience that I want to cover, and then I absolutely must see one of your projects live. So first, question from the audience. What games influenced you the most during your time as a young games journalist?
Great question. I'd say one of the really, really big influences that arrived was a title called Neo Scavenger. I've since had the opportunity to work with Daniel Fedor on Astronauts, which is his next game, which I'm very, very grateful for. But at the time, I played it as a teenager, and with a set of deterministic systems and a very particular framing, it created an emotional impact on me as a player that utterly outweighed the ostensible, even like quote unquote work that went into those systems, right? Like I'm moving little icons into other boxes to select actions, and somehow, because of the framing of that work and the structure of it, those little icons become an entire world. They mean everything. I've had a lot of really impactful games come along, including also Dropsy by Jay Tholen, who I've also had the opportunity to work with since on things like Hypnospace Outlaw. But I think a lot of Neo Scavenger in terms of how context elevates a work. You can have the best game mechanic in the world, but without a context to make that mechanic into something more than the sum of its parts, you're left with a beautiful idea in a shell that doesn't even necessarily deserve it.
Right. The mechanic still needs to sort of stand in for something, an expression of some kind, perhaps a representation or feeling to be made full.
Yeah, another great example of that actually is a game called Cargo Commander. Cargo Commander is ostensibly a 2D, 2.5D action roguelike about going through procedurally generated mining hulls and gathering resources and getting the heck out before you're eaten and before your oxygen runs out. But after you do your first few missions, you get a letter. It's from your family back on Earth. And turns out they're in a cycle of debt, which you contracted yourself out to this company to try to get them out of. And a couple more letters arrive, and you realize your money isn't making it home. And it looks like they're going to lose the house. And suddenly, you aren't just playing those missions to, get the next upgrade. It's like, I need to get back to my family. What's happening? Right. And you can't contact an administrator. Every time you wake up, there's this lonely bluegrass song playing. And it invests a enjoyable but fairly standard 2.5D action loop, a pretty clever platformer, but still just like at the end of the day, it's quote unquote just a game, right? And with a few lines of text and a couple of pictures, that thing is elevated into an emotional expression, a mode of intent, a creative vision. And whenever I look at, whenever I'm either working as a contractor on a project or developing a project now, I think, what is the thing? What is the small touch of humanity that makes this more than an interesting mechanic? Because if it's just an interesting mechanic, none of this works.
Keep that question in your heart, everyone listening at home. How do you fulfill a mechanic as opposed to just have one?
fulfilling a mechanic is
Yeah.
such a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful term.
How do we make sure the mechanic meets its promise? And I'm sure all those titles you just mentioned, the sort of discover algorithms we were describing earlier are probably not doing titles like that any favor. So another
sometimes like Inscription is doing really, really well right now.
Sometimes, but still, there's always try to take your own walk away from those cultivated paths and see what you can find underneath the lever system you described earlier. Let's move to the near recent past. Would you please guide us through a live demonstration of an airport for aliens currently run by dogs, one of your most recent games?
I'd be delighted to.
Terrific. Bryce, hit us. Okay, what are we looking at? Let's describe it.
So we are in an airport called Phobos, which when you first enter it, it is under construction. If you come here later, it will be much larger. There's a very helpful control board there. There's a dog outside who has witnessed whatever you just went into, and you're in a cage, which in the back end is surmounted by something that we call a shut up and learn box, so that you cannot skip the first story beat of the game or the fact that, please, for the love of God, you have controls you need to learn. You're inside this box until you complete this conversation.
And it's here we learn about how you ended up in the cage.
The dog you hired to cater the anniversary. You and your fiancée Krista are the last two human beings in the galaxy. You are fiancés, and you make time to meet each other as you both pursue your own healthy goals as a healthy long-distance couple in a galaxy of transit. And
they're really taking it in stride, being the last two humans around.
There was a process to get there that you learn as you play more of the game. But
right.
You hired a dog named Cage Dog, the dog who loves cages. And he was suspicious as hell. There was no part of this where the 7-foot dog looming over our table wasn't as suspicious as possible, says Krista. And you got locked into a cage. You had a concussion with a piano. And Cage Dog escaped on a hang glider. So you're just in a real weird emotional place right now.
Maybe it's just the idle animation that's making me feel like they're at least a degree of chillness about the current state. But yeah, I'm sure it takes a lot of work to get to a place of not running around screaming. That perhaps isn't up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you come to adapt to nearly anything, which is not necessarily a good thing.
Right. I don't want to rush Krista, but I do want to look at dogs for the sake of our demonstration.
And she closed with "I love you, weirdo," which becomes a mantra for your relationship.
However, will we get out of the cage? How about the stack of boxes?
Congratulations, Bryce. You've solved the first puzzle. Can't put anything over you.
Yeah. Let's talk to some dogs, Bryce.
First thing you want to do before you talk to this dog is look at this dog. And can you tap the P button once? Now, can you tap it as quickly as you can? You can pet any dog at any time with infinite hands, baby!
It's like a Gatling gun of petting for every... It's a barrel.
We just discovered that our traditional petting verb is not adequate for just how much you want to pet a dog in the moment.
Right. So did you develop a new term that adequately boosts the urge to pet?
We just we had the build, there was a couple of crucial moments where we thought about maximalism and what this journey is. You aren't going to talk to Witness Dog at all. Okay. Bold gambit. And I didn't mean to make you do the walk of shame. I'm so sorry.
You convinced Bryce to talk to Witness Dog. So we, Witness dog, not particularly helpful as far as, reporting anything that happened to you and Krista.
She dived across the platform, apparently.
Yeah.
Calls you a 5 out of 10.
Awesome. Let's talk to some other dogs.
But
Witness dog is not really our savior here.
We had a couple of crucial moments throughout development where there was a decision of what game we were making. One of them was like, hey, if you tap the P button, it pets the dog, but we can just make it to where you can just pet the dog as many times as you want. Like every time it just spawns a new hand. And there was a decision between, oh, no, that's not realistic. And actually, that sounds really funny.
Yeah.
And going with whatever sparked joy. Up to this point, I'd gotten very cynical. My attitude had transformed into one, which is the one thing that matters is making sure that the game ships. And
right.
Development is pain, and life is pain, and we all die someday.
Right.
And during the development of Dog Airport game, that perspective shifted to not only can we feel joy in the development process, but even more so than making a fun game for players. As much as possible, you make a fun game for players, but if the process of bringing this thing to life is not enjoyable for you, it isn't fair.
Yeah.
And it is not, and you deserve better. A better environment for you is possible. The fact that like pain is reserved for the game developers so we can bring joy to others is
it's a strange construct that
it's a strange construct.
You must suffer to create, like, to be in a deficit of joy in your life to create some sort of video game joy for others. But how about using the criteria of like, is this an enjoyable, joy-filled process to make? Perhaps that will also be seen on the other side for the audience as well.
So that's an expired boarding pass. Yeah, I made it to where, like, if the boarding pass is expired, how do we solve it? The boarding pass lights itself on fire.
So the criteria becomes not like, is this realistic or not, but like, does this just feel great, right?
Does this feel good to both build and for the player to enjoy?
Yeah.
We were talking about security checkpoints in this game's world. Actually, even earlier discussion was currency. How do you buy tickets? How do you buy items? What's the currency system? How do you earn it? And the consideration that we had, there was this mutual point of understanding where me and my principal collaborator in this game, Tom Vanita, we looked around and went like, there is no currency system. Dogs don't care about money.
They just give things away.
If it's going to make you happy, if it's going to help your life be better, of course a dog is just going to give it to you. Yeah, what matters is your health and well-being. And so, yeah, you go to an ATM, press the button, it just gives you money. And most dogs don't care about money. So like, it doesn't necessarily do anything anyway, depending on the dog you're talking to. So following this chain of logic became a very cathartic and like rebuilding process for the soul of what does a universe look like when it is built on joy, when it fundamentally cares about you regardless of any external factors, the same way that dogs approach, human beings. So this is a fully translatable cipher language, custom language, made it myself. You can read the alien language and get a bunch of jokes, which I only wrote in this for some reason, across the entire game. And it adds a new dimension to everything.
Just homemade cipher language. Fresh.
We'll never do it again.
Yeah. Okay. My question about that sort of rationale for like how you make choices, it's excellent. It's such an important moment in making any kind of creative project when you sort of like realize like what's the logic, what's the rationale that can drive it. That is generative. It's not that it's a yes or no, but that you just sort of like if you're in this mindset, like every decision will become clearer after that. But so
identifying the prism through which you filter the rest of your experience is really important.
Yeah. But so when you're giving the example earlier about like we were briefly hesitating on the multi-hand pet, feature, you're saying, oh, we didn't know if it was realistic enough. Was that before or after you decided to make all of the character art stock photos of dogs, right? Because it seems like at that point you've already cracked open, the territory of that, like some sort of perfect verisimilitude is not really like the top priority, right?
That's actually where, if anything, the most important decisions come in, because the only way you build a game like this and that it works and like isn't like actually shitty or poorly produced or something like that, excuse my language, is having a distinct style guide. There is a unexpectedly strict style guide for what works and doesn't work in the world of dog airport games. So yeah, we ask the question, does this work for this world? If so, why? If no, why? And add that to our understanding of the specific perspective we're bringing to life. One of my favorite examples of that is, so you will have just heard a zoop sound, and you now have an open door.
And oh yeah, these sounds here are pretty traffic. I'm not hearing the sounds right now, but that's okay because they may have been distracting what we were talking over. But that is but I was trying to draw attention to this commitment to the stock photos of dogs as your entire cast of characters, and then like being able to use those sort of found objects.
We have one sequence break. We have one character who is not.
My part. Yes.
We have one character who is not clip art.
There's many of them
specifically chosen.
Yes.
But yeah, like. Oh, sorry. Just to finish the point, I was just going to say, there's building the Prism and also like the style guide that makes that Prism cohesive is really, really critical, and it ended up being a lot of the development process. And I appreciate you asking about it. One of the big points is where you can place props on a stock photo. You can put things on the side of a stock photo, on top of a stock photo, and at the bottom of a stock photo, but
not in front.
You can't put it on the stock photo. So we have like these fancy bow tie assets, but I can't add a bow tie to cabinet dog directly on the asset because then the world breaks. It doesn't fit. It's not respecting the verisimilitude. So it's a bunch of really small details like that you don't notice as a player, but when you play the final product, it feels whole because all of those details were thought through, even in a ridiculous setting.
So I have one overarching question about these conversations you have with the dogs. So in general, the dogs, they obstruct more than they help, right? They're not particularly gifted at their jobs, but that is always offset with this sort of warmth and enthusiasm that one expects from dog kind. And so that mix, of course, is like consistently like very funny. But I guess I also wanted to know that tension of like dealing with someone who's not really that like what you need, but also is like disarming you with their warmth and attention. What kind of lived experiences are you drawing from, to create these kinds of scenes? What do these dogs and the way you deal with them represent to you?
A whole bunch of things. But in terms of airports, I traveled a lot pre-pandemic. And one of the big breakthrough points of the project was when I realized, so we had the story, which was you are finding your partner again and again across the universe to spend time with them as you both pursue your own independent lives as a long distance couple and professional human beings. You've entered the time zone. This is that actually right there. That is inspired by Metal Gear Solid 5, where it goes like, whoa! You step into it and it does that, but with like a dog bark, and the clock goes by in a similar way. Anywho, one of the big moments I realized is I thought I was making a game about, you pursuing a relationship across the stars. And I realized, oh, I'm Krista, because I was constantly leaving my family to, do my work. And I wanted them to know that even if I wasn't in the same place as them, that didn't reduce any of my affection or commitment for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I ended up in this very interesting position where I realized I was creating a game about pursuing myself as as this career-oriented person who nonetheless had a deep emphasis on the people in their lives and wanted to help them understand why this happened. It's also very much inspired by the fact that I come from a military brat background. So, Dad would be gone for months, up to a year, and he'd come back, and none of the love went away for him. It's just simply separated by distance. And every single fucking story I see, again, excuse my language, not sure if that's okay on this program.
It's all right.
Every single program I see talking about a long distance relationship treats it as a death knell. Like, this is the death of the relationship. It's all going to fall apart now. I wanted to present a counter example to this. What does a healthy long distance relationship look like, having seen it and having hopefully, attempted to cultivate it in my relationship with my own family? And it's up to the players how that landed, but seemingly the people who played the game, it hit hard. So
the dogs then, the non-family members who are they helping you, or are they making it ever more difficult to reconnect with the family members that are at the core of your attention? And
they're just dogs.
They're just
and they love you.
Yeah.
And not a greater metaphor in terms of them being like unhelpful or whatever else. It's just they're dogs. There's a little bit of satire though in terms of people like Bribe Dog, who he's a dog who loves bribes, and he doesn't know what the word bribe means. Him nor his cousins or sisters, brothers, none of his siblings know what the word bribe means, but they know if they use the word bribe, give me a bribe, people give them stuff for doing the job they're supposed to do anyway.
Right.
So, do we talk about government corruption in this game? Yes, but we do it through the medium of adorable stock photos.
We glance against it, but yes, you always have the dog
stock
photos.
Nuclear disarmament. We talk about universal healthcare. When you interact with the doctor, those are the save points throughout the game. You have to find a health clinic and save with the doctor. You can ask him what you owe him, and he's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, "Yeah, what do I owe you for the care?" And he's like, "You don't owe me anything for this. That would be ridiculous. I'm a doctor, not a monster." And that's me looking directly at the camera and going, "He's a doctor, not a monster. Isn't that ridiculous that you'd have to put a value on a human life? That would be weird, right? Dogs wouldn't do that."
Would you? So we can let Bryce keep playing the dog game. I feel like there are so many more things to discuss. Our time is drawing short. I want to say to the audience, if there's any other questions, we'll prioritize all of those. So keep them coming in case that there are any. But I have a whole bunch of other things that I could ask you about your work, and also just about the field of video game art in general, which path to choose, so hard to say. I guess I want to briefly check in with, we won't take a look at it because it's so fresh and so new, but we can talk about Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator for a moment. Or is it breaking into too large a topic while also we're looking at dogs? Is this too much cognitive load?
it is perfectly fine for us to do this. It's just a matter of you having the capacity to dive in.
Right.
What specific thing do you want to dive into?
I just want to, I guess, I have one question, which will hopefully tie these what we just seen with the Dog Airport game together. Is that because it's a much there's the trailer stuff that everyone can enjoy online. The aesthetic and the subject matter, organ trading, not the same level of buoyancy as the airport dog game, right? It's a darker title, and I wanted to know if that same principle of kind of like joy finding was at work while making this new project, or did a different rationale take over entirely?
What I would use for that is, in a similar way, we found like what inspired joy. So like one of the first major discussions we had was, is the soul an organ? Like I was like, it's gonna be a space world organ trading simulator. Ha! And then I had to identify what an organ was. Yeah. And I realized in this descending chain of madness, everything from economics to like what is an organ and what isn't an organ, even the function of an organ is in many cases arbitrarily determined. The economy is us mutually deciding the economy exists. Elon Musk couldn't say Tesla's pretty high, to be honest, and have that stock crater if it was based off of real value. It's a reflection of emotional investment and mutual belief.
Right.
So, when the question is asked, is a soul an organ? It's like, you know what? Screw it. Yeah, okay, the soul is an organ. This is a game where you can literally buy and trade a human soul. Because when you can put a dollar value on a thing, for some reason, our reptile brains change the context of it, and anything is okay.
And it's only consensus that determines whether or not we are supposed to do that effectively.
Yeah.
Enough consensus says, like, I guess that's the way we're thinking about this now. So now souls are on the shelf next to cereal boxes.
Exactly. Yeah. I wouldn't put a soul next to a cereal box. It might I put it more so in the electronics section, but depends on consensus.
Yeah.
So the idea of making, in particular for Space Warlord, tools that also allowed us to make large pieces of meaningful content in a very efficient manner meant that like we would make a joke with each other on Twitter about like juicing an organ, slurping an organ, and we have a pipeline that lets us make new content in 3 minutes or less. So I would literally I would share live while making it on Twitter, like screenshots, almost like a threat of like, you make this joke, but now it exists in the game. So pursuing this chain of implications from what does it mean to buy, sell, and trade organs? How does that impact society? What is the internal logic of this world, from character names to beliefs to human nature, and then fleshing it out in the most active and creatively enabling and healthy environment possible. That was the hope. That was the goal. And at least as far as the dev process go, I really feel like we achieved that.
So if everyone listening wants to see, we didn't get to take a visual look at this for this conversation. I just wanted to make sure we got to hear Xalavier describe the creative process that goes into it a little bit. If you're interested in finding the sort of visual and time-based dynamics that go into all those thoughts, it will be available to you in just a few days, won't it?
December 7th, 2021, and I have posted into the private chat the
terrific
release date trailer.
Okay, we have only 4 minutes left. This is a pretty risky and crazy idea. We've never tried it on the program, but we're going to try to do over about 3 minutes a lightning round.
Let's do it.
Rapid fire series of questions. Try to answer as quickly as possible. These are just general questions that I like to ask artists about their general ideas on the field. First, how does history inform what you do as a maker of games? What specific histories do you draw on? Go.
The production history of various mediums.
Terrific. How do you situate your work in relation to the term contemporary art?
I am not a business person. I am not an artist. I am a commercial artist specifically. I make things to be played, but not for players, to express specific creative vision and intent, and hopefully not go bankrupt in the process.
Terrific. How much do you think one's region or physical location becomes imprinted in the games they make?
I feel like people have soul regions, places that they specifically identify with that often appear in their work. This can be the forest, this can be the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's the desert. I rediscovered this recently. I didn't think I'd ever find that sense of home as someone who always spent his life traveling. And now it's appearing in my work all over the place. And I'm delighted to be able to identify very specifically the place where my brain, my mind, my soul goes as a creative being.
Excellent. And finally, what is a non-video game piece of media that has deeply influenced the way you produce games?
Musicals. Specifically the work of Stephen Sondheim.
We should
Sunday in the Park with George.
Yeah.
I find a lot to think about there. Sweeney Todd, I think a lot about there. It turns out if you sing about a thing, you can end up making interesting and even nuanced work about deeply unpalatable subjects otherwise. And here I am making a game about trading organs in space.
Right. Or talking about nuclear proliferation through dog stock photos. It takes the edge off.
Right. Hopefully.
Yeah. Thank you for participating in our very first VGA Fireside lightning round. I think
my pleasure.
I didn't set up a prize, but I'm pretty sure you just won that particular.
The prize is I get to come back again sometime.
Yeah, I hope so. We have so much more to talk about. But it's an hour has gone by, so it's time to wrap things up. I guess we sort of already did this, but how we like to ease our way out of every episode of VGA Fireside is, what would you like to plug, Xalavier?
An Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs is no longer on sale, which means you can give me more money for it, and I suggest you do so. Space World Organ Trading Simulator is coming December 7th to Steam and Xbox Game Pass.
Mm-hmm.
You can wishlist it now if you want to help me with the algorithm, and also just pick up the game when it comes out. Finally, I was also narrative director on SkateBIRD, which is on Xbox Game Pass, among other things. And I released a game about the military-industrial complex and being a battlefield mech courier called Can Android Survive with A Priori Digital recently. You can pick that up on itch.io and to other places, hopefully sooner rather than later.
I'm sorry we didn't get to SkateBIRD today. Actually, that's an apology to Bryce as well. I'm sure Bryce also wanted to play SkateBIRD live while we talked about it. But there's also SkateBIRD. It's out there. I will mention, by way of closure, that this program, VGA Fireside, is a production of VGA Gallery. And if you want to support this show and the other things that VGA Gallery does, please consider going to VGAgallery.org and buying a video game fine art print. That's a way to support both artists and our gallery and organization directly. You could also just give a donation or join our sort of membership program, VGA Society. It's all there at VGAgallery.org. Bryce, there's the VGA Zine that comes out every month that is free, and our peer-reviewed journal on video game art, the VGA Reader. It's all a bunch of VGA stuff. You can tell at this point. this has been really, I've enjoyed talking to you so much, and I hope to get the chance to do it again sometime in the future. Oh, wow. I got to do my thank yous. If you excuse me, I'll just do a little more monologue here. I want to thank producer and director of operations, Bryce Poles. I want to thank the designer and director of communications, Eleanor Schichtel, the VGA staff, and the VGA board. I want to thank the Independent Game Designers Association Chicago chapter. Thank you to Ross. I want to thank the media art students from the School of Visual Art and Design in the University of South Carolina. Thanks to Bailey, students in the media art and game design module in the radio, TV, film department at Northwestern. Thanks to Derek. I want to thank Electric Mirrors for the intro music. I want to thank the Oldham Music Youth Center Youth Brass Band for our rousing fanfare. And as always, if you know of an organization or group that is interested in programs like this, where we talk directly to people who make video games, why don't you send us a line? Any feedback at all to info@vgagallery.org. We would love to hear from you. Xalavier, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close this session?
I will close with the same sign off I sent to my patrons when telling them that they could now request their keys for the game. May your organs be valuable, your profits plenty, and the harvesters kind. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Terrific. Thank you for joining us. And from all of us at VGA Fireside, please stay warm.